A very good afternoon to one and all present. Welcome to a brand new episode of View TV in our series where we talk about pandemic law and technology. This is our second episode of the series, and it is my privilege and honor to be joined by two very special and esteemed guests.
No, I still can't hear.
Yeah.
Just
Can you
give us
speak
a
longer?
Yeah. That's fine. Okay, thanks.
Ma'am, I logged out now.
Yeah, please, thanks.
A very good afternoon, Pooja ma'am. We were just beginning the episode. I'm so glad that you could join us. Ma'am, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. If you may just unmute yourself, the microphone is on top. Yeah, perfect. We can hear you. So let's get started with this episode. Like I was saying, welcome to this brand new episode of the Pandemic Law and Technology series. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. We're going to be talking about the employment crisis and practices today. What we're going to be, first let's just put a little context to this discussion today, right? So what are we discussing today? So we're going to be discussing about that will this new phenomenon or the new normal as we call it today, work from home, change the employment laws in India? As a student, I'm sure many of you guys face questions that how do we make ourselves employable in these times? That is a particular question that must be haunting a lot of you. As young professionals who are either wanting to make the switch in the profession or you're trying to retain your jobs, I'm sure there must be a lot of insecurities that must be plaguing you at this point of time. So we're joined by two very esteemed guests and speakers on this panel who are going to help you answer all of these questions today. First, we are joined by Ms. Pooja Ramchandani. Ms. Ramchandani presently works with the mergers and acquisitions team of Shardul Amarchand Shaw, one of the most leading law firms in the country today. She specializes in the areas of employment law. She has provided advice to multiple companies in the area of employment contracts, creating HR manuals, retrenchment, background checks, and the work. So thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking your time from your busy schedule to be with us today. I'm sure it must be an extremely busy time with you with the current climate that we are in at this point of time. So thank you very much for taking out this time to join us and talk to us about this very important issue. Also in this, we are joined by Ms. Drishti. Ms. Drishti is a senior legal consultant with Vahura's law firm, Private Practice and Funds Group. She's a graduate from the Campus Law Center, University of Delhi, and completed her LLM from the University of Cambridge. She has experience of working with a legal tech firm in Cambridge, London. I'm sure it might excite a lot of you to know that she's actually worked with a firm that is an artificial intelligence powered firm. At Vahura, Drishti helps lawyers to build their career and helps clients with business oriented solutions. Thank you so very much, Drishti, for joining us today. It's truly an honor and a privilege to have you with us. I also have the good fortune of introducing my co-moderator for this session. My co-moderator for this session is Mr. Rajat Shah. Rajat Shah is a practicing advocate and a member of the Trust Board of Narayani Public School. He has perpetually mentored and motivated students to achieve accolades at school and university levels by understanding their needs and analyzing their true potential. He's a consultant to various schools and colleges, guiding students on shaping an upward career trajectory and training them on various co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Thank you very much, Rajat, for joining us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be moderating the session with you. So without further ado, let's begin with the session. I will give you the general format of the session. We would like to make the session as engaging. So I'm sure a lot of you have discovered the chat box feature. So make sure you're asking us a lot of questions in that particular chat box because we will be picking it up in the audience Q&A round. First, we will have a moderated set of questions with our panelists, and then we will open it up into our audience Q&A round. So without further ado, let's begin the session. So ma'am, first I would like to know from you, amid the various ordinances and orders giving effect to nullify certain provisions of the labor welfare laws, What are your thoughts on these various changes that are happening in the areas of employment laws in India? And is it really what these changes that are happening? Is it really an effective step to motivate entrepreneurs and people in the industry? If I may hear from you, Pooja ma'am.
Sure. Yes, well, you're right that, there are plenty changes that are happening as we speak. Even as of today and yesterday, there are changes in the law in relation to the standing orders, introducing fixed term contracts, and in relation to many, many laws, especially the factories laws, where there is, an exemption with respect to work hours across, the states of India. But I think the most significant ones have been the one in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, where there are these ordinances in place, which suggests to, give sort of a hiatus from the applicability of certain laws. Now, of course, this has been done in view of the pandemic to enable better economic activity and, market reforms, so that employers may be able to ensure that the workers, are engaged for a longer period of time. But while they do secure the employer's interest, but it is in some sense at the cost of the workers' rights. And it could probably also be violative of the fundamental rights under Articles 14, 15, 19, 21 of the Constitution of India. And if you guys are reading the papers, you would have read that the Supreme Court has been moved and there are PILs filed against these relaxations in several states like in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. And in fact, in some states, these notifications have been withdrawn. Like in Uttar Pradesh, the proposed ordinance has been withdrawn. And in fact, in Madhya Pradesh, the ordinance is awaiting presidential assent. So I don't know whether that's something that one will look forward to, and whether that is something which can happen. Because at the end of the day, one is looking at a balance. The labor laws have been promulgated to protect the oppressed class, and in the current situation, even more, I don't think that, given the different kind of notification that the government has issued during the lockdown period, where the labor class was protected from terminations, from reduction of wages, etc., that these other ordinances and notifications are really going to see the light of day. Yes, in some states like Assam and others, where the hours of work has been extended in factories and establishments, that has been implemented in several states, but for a short period of time.
Thank you so very much, ma'am, for answering that question. So I have another question that I would like to pose to you, which is that, a lot of sectors have been badly hit because of this pandemic. So how exactly do you think that the employment contracts, specifically in the worst hit industries of, entertainment, tourism, hospitality, and sports industry, will be affected by these developments by the pandemic? If you may throw some light on this.
Sure. Now, to start off with, the worst case, the worst hit industries are already reducing their work staff. They are already terminating employment. And if not, they are already implementing cost-cutting measures. So, the cycle of the recession is going to take a while to come back. And, economists feel that, another 2 years at least is required. The terminations and the cost-cutting measures continue to continue with respect to all organizations, those who have not done it and were waiting for the right time to do it, given all the restrictions in place, do it now. And there will be further continued action in this area. So coming from the cost-cutting measures, yes, there could be a lot of changes from the manner of structuring contracts, and I think the biggest one would probably be fixed-term contracts, which have always been permitted. But then there are several, jurisprudence to say what is a fixed-term contract, and if it's a job of perennial nature, how a fixed-term contract is something which cannot be entered into. But with the introduction of fixed-term contracts and standing orders, etc., I think the government is sort of recognizing the fact that you rather have a job for a short period and earn a livelihood, at least for a short period, rather than not have one at all. So in terms of restructuring of contracts, yes, there could be the most critical one there would be the wages, the allowances, and the way the remuneration is structured. That could see a lot of change, and especially in a lot of industries, a lot of people are working from home where it is possible. So of course, in the industries where work from home is not possible, it's not possible because of the nature of the work. But where it is possible, wages could probably see a change in the way the package is structured. Like you had traveling allowance, conveyance allowance, so on and so forth. So those things are not required anymore, as opposed to internet costs, etc. That may be something that might be demanded of by employees. So wages is one area where there could be some level of changes. Then the requirement-based contracts, like as I said, like fixed-term contracts, there could be contracts which would be structured as not requiring someone for the entire duration, like a permanent employee, probably a part-time employee, probably expect someone for maybe half the day. So restructuring of the hours of work of employees, which will help in reduction of costs for an organization. Now, the other aspect which I think may probably creep in, and of course this is something which may happen in the future, maybe not immediately, is to have policies, and maybe not as part of contracts, but at least policies where layoffs are recognized as part of policy measures. Now, under labor law, the term layoff is not understood to mean a termination. Temporary suspension of employment, and the protection which is accorded under the Industrial Disputes Act is only for workers who are in factories, mines, and plantations. So while that particular provision, which essentially accords a protection, is only available for workers in factories, mines, and plantations, provisions of the possibility of layoff finds place also in the standing orders. Now, as we know, standing orders also is applicable only to the workman category employees. So then what happens to the non-workmen? So they are all governed by policies and contracts only. And apart from the Industrial Disputes Act and the Standing Orders Act, there's no other legislation that really provides for layoff as such as is understood within the meaning of the Industrial Disputes Act. So I would think that organizations might deliberate on this point, and if in the future there are eventualities like this, like a pandemic, etc., which would fall under the definition of layoff, like an epidemic and all. But then one has to see how to implement it, and it might be something that might be incorporated as part of policies.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering that question. So, Drishti, I would like you to jump in at this point of time, and I have a question that I'd specifically like to ask you. So, a lot of corporations have adopted to the new normal of working from home on a large scale. Do you somewhere feel that this is going to lead to a substantial rise or a positive trend in the employment rate of certain industries? Also, another question to that would be that how do you see technology aiding in efficiently promoting work from home and this entire practice? So if we may hear from your experience on this.
Definitely. So one thing I would say that COVID definitely created a global pandemic uncertainty, and most of the organizations, because of COVID, has realized that work from home is also possible. Limited the industries where work from home can be done, but there are certain industries like essential services, etc., where on-ground work is required. So as you said, whether moving to a work from home format, increase in the employment opportunities, again, it will be based upon how the industry is affected at this point of time. Whether if I talk about legal services as well, it has also been impacted a lot by COVID. Even the legal industry has seen layoffs, has seen pay cuts. Most of the companies has gone into the cost saving mode at this point of time. However, at the similar point of time, there are other industries where work from home has increased. So most of the employers are now looking for contract-based work. As Ms. Pooja rightly said, that they are looking for a contract-based work, whether it's a half-day contract or a 6 months or a 12 months, how we say a secondment. So they are looking for a shorter term based contract so that they are not liable or for them for a long longevity in that sense. So that way they are doing that cost cutting and everything. And it is also quite seen even in the legal field, like most of the lawyers are being seconded to one company for 6 months or 12 months. And other industries which are seeing a boom in work from home will be like online teaching and consulting industry. Like we see Upgrad, Coursera, they are doing quite well. Like there are students who are taking courses, and I would really commend these software developers who have come up with this concept. I was recently reading about Upgrad that they cut the salaries like from April to June, but in July they are repaying them all the cut salaries with respect to July, because they have seen such kind of increment and also they have made profit in these 3 months. So that's quite amazing. And another sector which is seeing a boom, like even if you see about Zomato or Swiggy, they have transformed their services to essential services. They are seeing that there's a boom in essential services even online. Like, so a lot of work has moved to online. So you correctly mentioned that technology is playing a big role at this point of time, and people who are not accustomed to technology previously are now adapting these technology. And talking about myself, I am a legal tech enthusiast. So I worked in UK with the artificial intelligence law company. And when I came to India, my only motive was that in order to work in this field, mainly like in legal technology field. And thankfully, I started working with Vahura and also with Agami. So Vahura is a co-founder of Agami. So we do a lot of work on the legal tech side. So Agami is kind of a catalyst which has all these legal minds and the change making minds together in order to bring a change in law and justice. So when I talk about technology, see, one thing is very important to understand, that there is a polite interaction between a human and a technology. Then only it will work in a better manner. It's not, technology can't work on their own. So there is a lot of apprehensions in mind of people initially when this whole legal tech thing just came by and all that. Technology will replace lawyers. Not at all. It will not. It will just make us more efficient and effective. The work which a lawyer normally, say a due diligence work, which a lawyer might do in just like take 10 days in order to do, a technology, with the help of technology, you can do it just in 2 days. Like I'm taking a maximum time, but it can do within lesser. So within that period of time, you can do n number of deals, where you are able to do one deal in 3 months. You're able to do n number of deals in that period of months. So it makes you more efficient. So that kind of understanding is very important. And now with respect to this COVID, everyone is going on a technology mode, whether it's very minimal, like very small, like use of Zoom, use of like Microsoft Teams or etc. So they are all coming on to the use of technology so that they can make work from home more easier. So yeah, so if I say in short and summarize my point, so work from home definitely has seen an increase after this pandemic has hit, and it will continue maybe for another 6 months. That is kind of a new normal which we have to follow. And with respect to increase in work from home opportunity, I would say rather than from the main industry, I am seeing an increase in quite of like new industry, not new industry, but new practice areas which are coming, whether it's online teaching, agriculture, technologies, telecommuting, advertising, or if you say content making, they are seeing a rise and people are taking up jobs working from home. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, Drishti, I totally agree with you that, the way forward is going to be definitely for online and digital businesses. And we are seeing a quantum jump in the way they are doing.
Definitely.
So my question again is to ma'am. If I may know, ma'am, do you think that there is a change that is required on a policy level that needs to be framed, across sectors, considering this new normal that we're operating in, which is work from home, because we don't know when this pandemic is going to end. So things seem to be uncertain for the near future, where a lot of industries will be working from home. A couple of tech companies have told employees that they're going to be working from home for at least 6 more months. So do you think there is a policy intervention required at this stage? Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. So in fact, not only have IT companies told its employees to work from home for 6 months, I think in some cases like I think it is Tata, one of the Tata Group companies. So I think they're making it a norm to work from home. And I think that is fantastic, especially what Drishti said about technology, etc. And yes, that is the new way of life. It's well, the pandemic is an unfortunate way of accelerating it, I would say. But yes, I think that was something that inevitably had to happen. Now, in terms of policy making, etc., see, the labor laws currently do not restrict or prohibit employees from working from home, but neither do they expressly enable it. There are certain nuances that one will have to look into from a labor law perspective to broaden the scope of the laws which deal with various issues. So, like for example, the working hours. Now, see, all of us who are working from home, there is a blur between. I don't talk for lawyers because we don't have work hours, but with respect to others, where there are these fixed timings of work, like 8 or 9 hours, right? And then there is overtime. There is a monitoring issue clearly, but apart from that, there is a blur in terms of work hours and non-work hours, and everything is getting blurred and mixed up. So here the issue is that what about overtime? Is that something which you need to pay? You should just sort of get exempted from, because there is so much of flexibility. IT companies, any which way, had flexibility in terms of their work hours, so they this sector, I think, is already equipped in terms of their manner of hours of work and how to handle the overtime, etc. But others, how do you manage that? So I think there could be probably a need to look at those kind of issues: work hours, leave. How do you look at it differently? Accumulation of leave, carry forward of leave. In terms of work from home guidelines attract the requirement of confidentiality and data privacy issues as well. Now, everyone is, it has access to a lot of information confidential of the organization. And then there are video conferencing, right? So all of these issues, give rise to data privacy issues. So another aspect leading from there is POSH. Now, as we know that the POSH Act has a very, very wide definition to the term workplace, right? Yeah. Now, workplace, even without a work from home situation, always included the home of a person when you're working from home. Now, virtual workplace is another concept coming from, the current scenario. Because when you are doing conferences and video conferences, there could be potential POSH issues, which organizations and employers need to be mindful of. The law is something which already, I think, in a broad way provides for it, but one needs to look into in terms of policies on how are you, what is the training required from a work from home perspective and a POSH issue perspective. I think there is a relook at the sensitization sessions there. Moving on from the POSH related matters, I think the role of an employer with respect to safety and health measures also requires a rethink, because when you are at a workplace, an employer is responsible for your health and safety. There is a Compensation Act and everything there. The Shops Act provides for certain health and safety measures. Now, those things cannot be made applicable, right, when you're working from home. And an employee obviously can't claim or require those kind of benefits or those kind of measures because you're working within the realms of your home. So those things, I think, automatically probably don't apply. And, probably one needs to think of, what does that mean, in a work from home scenario. Now, IT industries where they're working from they have back offices, and they're working from special economic zones, etc. They have permissions right now in place from the authorities, the regulatory authorities, to work from home and move the equipment to in a work from home scenario. So now that is something which I think requires to be done at a scenario and a permanent level. So there are quite a few issues apart from, of course, the remuneration part, as I've already spoken of earlier, where there could be tax implications also when you look at what are the kind of benefits that an employee is currently entitled to, and in a work from home scenario, what should an employee be entitled to, because it's going to be like a long session. So as I said, there are various factors and there are various things that one needs to look into under various laws. if this was supposed to, continue to be a new normal, as they're calling it nowadays.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think you have highlighted a very significant point, especially about the bearing that this is going to have on the way we look at the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, which is an extremely critical act for ensuring a safe environment for both genders to work. So I think that's a very important highlight that you've made there. So at this point, I'd also like to request my co-moderator to jump in and take over for this session. Over to you, Raja.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kritika. So, touching base with what Ms. Pooja just addressed and talking about the safe places for all, I want to pose this question to Ms. Drishti that when we talk about gender diversity, do you think these places have become more conducive for women to work? And do you think our workplaces have safe? At the same time, would you be addressing that the substantive change that we have seen from past 3 months in this scenario?
Yeah, so I would say definitely there has been change in, if I say in last 1 decade, there has been change where the workplace has become conducive even after coming of the POSH Act. It was there, but like companies are now taking it seriously. There is a, I would say like kind of a POSH in charge where if anyone is facing some issue, then like they can report and it's taken very seriously. So yes, in last few years or maybe like last 10 years, if I say specifically, workplaces have become conducive. I'm just highlighting the positive part. I want to be positive on this side, that being a woman myself, I believe that a woman can do the similar what a men can do, to be honest. And we can be active in all the practice areas worldwide, whether it's just like on the corporate side or on the teaching side. But normally what I see, like as a woman, there's higher like diversity of women on the teaching side. If we talk about like schools or colleges, there's a larger proportion of women as a lecturer because they feel that more inclusive environment. And also one important thing is that women, maybe for ages, they are having like shouldering double responsibility, whether it's home or also workplace. So, and they're better manager of it. So that's why we see a larger proportion of women on a teaching side or on the healthcare side, where they can balance their work and home at the same time. And also another point I would like to reflect is that there is a greater diversity, I would say, or like reaching to the equality level when we talk about like a PQE level from 0 to 4 years. We'll see the similar range of men and women between there. But after that, we see a more like when we talk about senior positions or something, we see like making it more as compared to women, because a lot of other responsibilities women need to comply. But that is changing now. We see, if we see in a law firm, most of our managing partners are women. If we see in companies or any other sector, they are being taken over by women at this point of time. So I do see a positive change in this respect, but there is a long way to go. Because I always feel that greater diversity at workplace results in greater profitability and also value creation. There is like a direct correlation between a leadership and also better, like a woman leadership and better financial prospects. And also I'll just try to bring in that COVID thing also into it. Like New Zealand is, if you see countries like New Zealand, Germany, they are able to cope up better with pandemic because they are led by a woman. So these are few examples. There's women can be better leaders in some of the sectors anyhow. Like, and also when you talk about say like as a diversity, government, I feel government should take much more measures. If I talk about UK, so like every company has to submit like a diversity statistics to the government. So it creates a lot of pressure on the stakeholders and also the board members, just in order to they have a proper diversity maintained in the firm. And when you talk whether the situation has changed even after pandemic, like since everything has moved work from home, so definitely it has seen a positive impact where women are taking up more jobs. I'm not saying like maybe the mainstream jobs, but there are a lot of increment in the freelancing job. There is a lot of increment in content writing. There is advertising, or if I say journalism, like online, just basically like writing articles or something, that has seen a boom. And even women are taking interest in order to apply, whether it's like Amazon, like telecommuting, like customer services and everything. So it's like seeing a boom in women as compared to men, because they can handle both work as well as their home responsibilities. But still, there is a long way to go. I believe that he needs to be more empathetic towards women. There should be more empathetic leadership and inclusion. Like inclusion is an ongoing process. It's not like one off taking something. It has to go on, and everyone has to realize that we have to make more the workplace more inclusive and more diverse, so that at the same time it's respected also more, because I feel like, and it's our experience that I've seen most of the candidates, the first question they might pose to any of the employer, that how diverse is your organization, so not to prevent any organization to tarnish their reputation, is better that they become more conducive and also more respectful in having a greater diversity. Yeah.
You certainly touched upon the very important aspect, and like I would like to mention this, that I feel privileged to be in the company of three dynamic ladies, being leaders in their respective areas. And adding on to that, I would like to pose this question to Ms. Pooja, that ma'am, do you think people are more accepting of the norm that there should be a women director on board in a public sector company? And at the same time, how do you see this particular norm developing in coming years?
See, well, there is definitely a regulatory push there where, companies have been mandated by law to have at least one independent woman director. And statistics show that, at least 977 out of the top 1,000 companies have a woman director, as per the NSE info database. So while yes, the percentages are increasing in terms of women directors, and that's, I think, more in terms of the regulatory requirement rather than the mindset. I think mindset still needs a lot of change. So as Drishti very correctly said, we do have a very long way to go, and the only way for that is inclusion. That's the word. And again, using Drishti's words, respect. So that's something which is only going to come with a change in mindset. And I don't think we're there yet.
So certainly, ma'am, we all need to work on this positivity, and it's our responsibility as an individual as well to develop this with a more conducive and a more positive nature at hand. So, ma'am, coming back to our next question.
And just to add one more thing to it, it is not a matter of just what the law requires you to do. And if you look at, the new codes that are coming up, in the new codes, whether it's the wage code or any other, there are provisions there also in terms of, putting together committees, etc., where there is, again, a requirement to ensure that women are part of that committee mandatorily.
Yeah.
So, as I see it, let's see. I don't think mindset is just going to change by itself, because it's there forever.
Yeah.
And we react to society, and it's not just our country. It's barring a few countries, I think almost everywhere, right? So I think the right step forward is to bring about this change through the law, and that is when it will force people to look at things differently.
Yeah.
And then only we can develop. Certainly, ma'am. Certainly. So now coming back to our next question, I would like to address Ms. Pooja with the upcoming trends and new practices that you. What are the upcoming trends and practices that you feel will take place in the employment contract post this pandemic, and how those practices can safeguard us and the employees?
So as I think I've already mentioned a lot of this in the earlier questions, so a lot of my answer is going to be more repetitive. I think what we can look forward for is in terms of change in the manner of the structuring of the remuneration, which will have probably an impact from a tax angle also for both employer and employee. Fixed term contracts is something which I think is something which is come to stay. And I mentioned the layoff provisions also. And of course, further look into data privacy and confidentiality in employment contracts and policies. That's where I see that's where I see a lot of change. Probably a lot of organizations might relook at policies and their employment structures to see, how they need to sort of align themselves with the new way of working.
Certainly, ma'am. So, Ms. Drishti, would you like to address that? What are the scenarios that the young professionals and students can work upon, and what are the skill set that they can develop to make them more employable in the current climate?
Definitely. I would say yes, hard times are there. It's difficult times for everyone. So I would say it's not just the students, but even for the professionals, it's hard time for everyone, whether it's from the from the employment side or whether it's from the client side. So everyone is in the same boat, but different scenarios are there. So I would say being optimistic. It's one of the most important thing, that be optimistic, and second is to believe in yourself. If these two things are achieved, then at least you have started off on a right track. And when I talk about skills at this point of time, definitely there are a lot of online courses which are available. So do try to check out from them that what suits your basically what interests you in that sense, and how it can add value to your job prospect. It's not that you have to engage in a all-time or long-time employment at this point of time, but mainly taking short-term contract work or something, but add to your skill set in that manner. So there are a lot of courses, talking from legal tech side, there are courses on data privacy, there's course on legal tech available. So definitely increase your information about it, increase your knowledge about it, so that when you're back into this market and when market opens up, definitely is moving towards new normal, and market is seeing a change. What it was in say April or May, that was a very difficult time where in all industry or all practice area was seeing a tough time. There was a hiring freeze or layoffs, cost cutting, everything. But now slowly and gradually it is moving towards a bit better environment. So I would say definitely urge yourself and keep yourself informative about what new it is coming in the market. Always try to understand this is kind of a change making. It's kind of a new normal. So you have to adapt to that new normal. Bringing new skill set. So new skill set is on the lines of maybe technology, of maybe data privacy. As Ms. Pooja said, data I'm just talking about Ash data or technology. They will be next big thing, and a lot of changes will be brought along this kind of area. Identify those areas, and I would say, see, I practice for some time, and then I switched on to say a legal technology. I found my passion into it. So there's always a way out. It's just like finding your way out at this point of time. It's difficult, no doubt, but just stay optimistic and believe in yourself, and keep on brushing up your skills. I would say that, yeah.
Perfect. So, coming back to our questions from the attendees and viewers, I'm sure Kritika must have gone through certain queries from the audience side, and she would like to take that up now.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Rajat. So, now we go into the audience questions. So I think this is also a very important question that one of our audience members has asked us. That how do you think higher education institutions, like in this case, law schools, need to respond to these changes? I mean, obviously, a situation like this means that there has to be some changes in the curriculum. There has to be some changes in the pedagogy, so that you are able to make the new set of lawyers who are coming in more employable and more amenable to working in the new normal. So first, if I can hear, Pooja ma'am, from you, that what do you feel that what are going to be the new requirements from the younger lawyers who are coming into these law firms? And then, Drishti, I'd like to hear from you that what is the sort of technology exposure that we should have in the curriculums at law school to make them more adept? So first, over to you, Pooja ma'am.
So in my view, I think it's skill sets in technology. That is something which is extremely, extremely important. I belong to a different generation altogether, and to my mind, I think all you guys are completely a different generation from me and are already adept as far as technology goes. But yes, as I'm hearing Drishti, there is much more to learn, and that is definitely going to be an added advantage. So that is something that, probably law schools might want to introduce as a part of their curriculum, most definitely. That's one. Well, in terms of upping your skill sets, etc., I think one has to look at how practically the questions that you've asked me. What kind of issues discuss it as part of your curriculum also. I'm sure you guys are all keeping abreast with the changes in the law, so that should be something which should be discussed. Like if employment law is an elective or a mandatory course, I'm not sure how your law school is in terms of employment law. So from an employment law perspective, I feel that your course content should definitely include what's coming in the future. And keeping a tab on the changes, keeping a tab on the impact of the changes, those things really help. Of course, I'm the same principle would apply for any industry,
Yeah.
So yeah, those kind of things. Flexibility is another, and I think well, this is going into a little different sort of comment, not more from the current scenario perspective, but see, the thing is that well, everyone must know law is a jealous mistress. If you have decided to do law, you have to give your life to it. No one says that you cannot have a life, but you need to give your life to law and then everything else comes after. So that's a mindset that I think needs to come back, which I think is missing in today's generation.
Drishti, can we hear from you now? What do you think that in terms of technology exposure, you're talking about AI, you talk about blockchain. Do you think, how do we bring this into the law school curriculums today?
Definitely. I believe first change that should come, like with respect to this COVID pandemic, that everyone has become accustomed to this remote working. I believe that remote education should also be there, where like people even in tier 2 city can get education even from the top institution, because everyone may not be able to afford it. And it's happening nowadays. It's happening because I don't know whether you're aware about, but Harvard Business School released some online courses and they were for free until unless you want some certificate. But at least like for building your skill set, there was some part of the course were at least free, and some courses were free, and it didn't even charge some money. So a lot of universities are doing that. So I believe that's a very good step, especially in this kind of a scenario. And second, most of the universities are going online, whether even I'll talk about the degree point of view, they are going online, whether it's a LLM degree, MBA degree or something, they are moving to online. And if I talk about the course, definitely law, information and technology should be there. There should be I would say, focus on corporate governance as well, which is, I think, is missing in from an Indian law point of view, like from the teaching point of view, like corporate governance sector. Then I believe blockchain technology is like next big thing, and if they should start at least some basic in the law school, they should start teaching it. And another thing, I feel that law school should move away from being theoretical. They should become more practical in nature. Like I know, like most of these 5-year courses, they already have these internships and everything. But when I talk about being practical, is not just having internship, but bringing the practical implications like while reading law. That will be like maybe through any kind of professor who is expertise in this kind of field, or calling up any kind of say from any other field or something. But it should become more interactive rather than just being theoretical. Because the reason I'm saying is because I'm from Campus Law Center, and Rajat would also agree with me that we are mostly into the theoretical format. Till now, it hasn't changed. We are mostly theoretical format, and if we see other universities like NALSA, NUALS and everyone, they're still moving to that practical format. So I feel that it should be a unique protocol followed by all the law universities, where it becomes more practical knowledge rather than just being a knowledge.
I think I totally agree, and I think the very valuable point made by Pooja ma'am, that really there's no substitute for hard work enough.
You're not audible, sorry.
Now, am I audible? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that I think there are some very valuable comments and points made here. I think Pooja ma'am is totally bang on right, that there's no substitute for hard work in our profession, and when you actually decide to become a lawyer, you're pretty much married to the profession. So I totally agree, and I think great insights coming from Rishti as well. I mean, there is this need that you may choose not to be in the space of technology laws or legal technology, but it's always a good idea for you to be at least exposed to the foundations. Because as we know in the law, you may be a practicing advocate also, but tomorrow we are moving towards a lot of disputes in the technology space. So at some time, this knowledge is going to come handy. Over to you, Rajat, for a couple of more questions from the audience.
Yeah, so ma'am, as you said that it's all about the years of hard work and law being the jealous mistress, it demands a lot of time. At the same time, ma'am, there's always an ongoing debate about specialization versus practicing law in general. So how do you see young professionals, someone who's into profession for a couple of years, how do they focus about their entire practice area or their scenario about employment? What is more important for a young professional, being a specialist about a particular area or practicing law in general?
Okay, so my view on this has changed along with the time. When I joined the profession, at that time, there were just two, types of departments. There was litigation and there was non-litigation. That's it.
Non-litigation.
And then non-litigation went into, general corporate and the various other, for different practice areas and specializations that have come along the way. Now, as I see it, that, while earlier on I used to believe that initially in the profession, of course, one should, dabble with almost everything. And those who belong to my generation and a few years later probably had the opportunity to do that. Clearly, everyone knows right from the beginning whether you want to do lit or non-lit. That's very from the beginning, right? Now comes in after you choose that basic two buckets, what is it that you want to do? Today, as I stand, I don't think there is any harm in, choosing the specialization right from the beginning, because there is a demand for specialization. There's a demand for those practice areas, right? So I'm going to talk from my perspective, okay? When I look for expanding my team and adding a member to my team, I want someone who is interested in employment law and who has that specialization, who has studied it right coming out of college, and who wants to practice employment law, because today there is a demand for employment law, which wasn't there 10 years ago. But today, yes, there are employment councils and organizations, and there are openings, as Drishti is going to, I'm sure, be able to add more to that. That there are openings in-house for employment councils in
Definitely.
Fortune 500 companies. So yes, there is a demand. There's a demand for all for practice areas. So specialization, I think, is the key today.
I'm sure you would like to add something to it.
Yes, I completely agree. If I say labor and employment, especially from my experience, like for last 2.5 or 3 years when I'm with Vahura, I have seen like gradual increase in especially the requirement on the labor and employment side, not just from the law firm, but also from the in-house side, like from the company side. And rightly mentioned by Ms. Pooja, there are employment council, and also I would say like within Big Four also, within the global compliance department, when you talk about, there is always a requirement for like an L&E specialist, like a labor and employment specialist, because when you're setting up at different jurisdictions, they always have to comply with the laws. So yes, labor and employment has taken I would say a huge shift. Definitely there's a huge demand for it, and she correctly mentioned it that specialization has become important now, because I'll just say from being on the other side of law, like being from the business side of law, see, like every law firm today has specialized partners. So when you talk about corporate law, it's under mergers and acquisition, private equity, venture capital, or then come indirect taxation, direct taxation, then come competition law. So everyone is a matter expert. Everyone is a subject matter expert in their own. So they want specialist people or who have experience in that kind. So definitely specialization is picking up, and everyone is looking for people, even from a fresher, whoever wants to start off with something. No doubt till 0 to 2 is something kind of an experiment years where they want to experiment, but after 2 years at least they start going in a similar direction. So in a specialized direction. So definitely specialization is required. Yeah.
So definitely Drishti, and I'm sure this will help out a lot of young professionals. Since we are running short on time, there's just one thing I would like the both our esteemed speakers to add quickly. How do we advise the young professionals, right from 0 to 2 PQE to a higher level, to deal with the much talked about mental health issue? Because I'm sure that is something which we all face on our day-to-day career. So how exactly to like, what are your certain advices or like bullet tips points to be addressed with the young professionals? We would start with Pooja ma'am.
Mental health certainly is very, very important and is something that one has to, give a lot of significance to in today's day and age. I think, here one needs to, how do I put this? One has to, I think, have belief and faith and confidence in yourself, and should not shy away from asking for help, because I think that's the key here. And the taboo on mental health, which probably in our society still exists, unfortunately, is something that will have to go away with so much of talks on mental health, so many newspaper reports on unfortunate incidences, etc. So it has definitely become very, very important in today's day and age. And I think young students, young professionals, or anyone, everyone should, well, take life as it comes, I would say. It's not your job is not end all and be all. Yeah, I mean, like, you have to balance your life out, whether or not law is a jealous mistress. But we all have chosen that. I'm assuming here that most people who choose law choose it out of their own decision, right? Not that you're forced into it. If you have, please leave it. Do what you like. Be happy. Because if you're happy, you will work well. If you're happy, you will enjoy the profession. Because in life, generally, every day you learn, and in law, you learn every day. Today also, I've learned so many things from whatever Drishti has said and what you guys are saying. So everyone doesn't know everything. So, and you learn every single day. So I think that's the way one should take life. Be positive.
Certainly, Drishti, do you have something to add on to this?
Yeah. So one thing I'll say, like, I might not be your age, like whoever are passing out, but still, I would say we are still quite enough in order to manage our life and change our life in a manner which we want to. It's still not too late. And life is beyond just a job. Like everyone who is hearing out to me at this point of time, and especially people between 0 to 2 or who are facing employment issues at this point of time, I would say relax and be optimistic. Keep working on yourself. I know it's difficult time, and sometimes these advice just go haywire, and they are like, why, like, you don't know what I'm going through, you're just giving advice like from like just out of the view or something. But definitely these things do work. Like be optimistic, believe in yourself, because it can only take you through this kind of circumstance which we are all facing at this point of time. And don't feel that you are only there. There are hundreds of other people who are sailing in the same boat. That is most important to understand. It's not just you, but there are 100 other people who might be in much more worse situation than you are in. So just be positive. And secondly, like mental health is, like, to be honest, very important issue. And good part would be, even if you want to maybe consult someone outsider, like maybe a psychiatrist or a counselor, don't hesitate. Never, I would say never hesitate in reaching out to them, because it's an important time. Because if you feel that you want to speak to a third party, because third party is always able to give you a view without being judgmental about you. So that's something very important. So do reach out to them. That's very important. And take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Drishti. So I'm sure, Kritika, I have a very hardworking co-moderator. I would like to introduce this to both our panelists. She's a law practitioner. At the same time, she's a member of a university board. So I'm sure she's working from a lot of discipline, and she would like to add something onto this before we go to the concluding remark.
Thank you so very much, Rajat, for the very kind words. I think I totally agree with both Pooja ma'am as well as Drishti. I mean, I think we're all going through testing times, and I think what's really important is the acceptance needs to be there. We need to accept if we need help, we should reach out. I think there's no other way to look at it, because the key is acceptance. And I think, we stay in a time where, thank God now we have started talking about these issues. Back then, people used to never talk about it, and they used to kind of, swallow themselves in the misery that they're going through because of the anxiety. These are anxious times. I think please reach out to the people you have confidence in. Make sure you have a lot of people who are, who you can speak to. So create outlets for yourself and get professional help whenever you need it. And just remember that everybody is in the same boat. Yeah? Everybody is going through similar issues.
Thank you so much. So now, it's time for our concluding remarks since we are running on out of time. I, on behalf of Vijay Bhumi University and Naraini Public School, would like to thank both our panelists, Ms. Pooja Ramchandani and Ms. Drishti Bindra, for accepting the kind invitation and for definitely having this very interesting and engaging conversation, which will provide very deep insights to the young professionals, the students, or people who are trying to look over a switch in their career, especially regarding the deep nuances of layoffs, mental health, and specifically about the specialization topic that we discussed. And this is going to really help out and reach out to a lot of viewers and attendees, which will have great takeaways from this particular session. And I would also like to thank my co-moderator, Ms. Kritika, for working out day and night to make this session very successful and concluding one. Thank you everyone for joining, all our attendees and viewers.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much, Rajat, for your efforts.
Thank you so much,
Pooja ma'am and Drishti. It really wouldn't have been possible without both of you taking out the time to be with us this afternoon.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.